Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Kahn Report. Wherever you get your podcast, you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep that momentum going. Always much appreciated when you tune in. You can find us on YouTube, by the way, as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated, like I just said. Also, don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. I will have a story up sometime over the next several days, probably over the weekend, on Sam Howell, things that he really kind of focused on to help him progress and learn the offense and get to a good spot for the summer, for the season. So look for that again sometime over the next several days, probably over the weekend. So today was supposed to be, or this episode was supposed to be an OTA practice wrap-up, but they canceled the last OTA practice. Kind of a reward, except that they still had meetings, especially, and those meetings were more important probably for the young guys. And I think, because I don't know how many veterans actually went to those, but for the young guys, that was important, and the rookies are still in town. And so the coordinators had told Rivera that they felt like what they needed most was another round of meetings, more so than getting on the field. And I think they felt pretty good where they were at health-wise after the spring, outside of Armani Rogers, which was a tough injury for him and for them. But overall, they felt pretty good about where they were at. And so why go back on the field and risk it? So I think that was part of the reason why they just decided to cancel that last practice. Anyway, I'm going to get to some, what I consider some positive developments, tough word, positive developments for them this spring, and also some lingering questions. I don't think there were any negative developments. God, why am I having trouble saying development? Slow down, man. But I don't think there were any negative ones. I think there are things that you still wonder about. And maybe you look at and say, could they have done this and that? Yeah, but I don't know that that's negative. It's just another option. Anyway, so I'm going to get to all that in a minute, but I did want to start off with some of the Hard Knocks talk, I guess, because, and I told you this a couple months ago, that there are definitely people in the organization who want Hard Knocks here. I don't know that all those guys are on the coaching staff, but there are definitely people in the building who would love Hard Knocks to be in Ashburn this summer. Will it happen? I don't know. As of several days ago, the team had not heard anything from Hard Knocks. So there's obviously 3 other teams that would be in contention for it, or who would be eligible for it. I didn't say contention because I don't know that any of the coaching staffs truly want it. It's more of a marketing thing. So if you're the Jets, or if you're HBO and you have the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, what would you want? I know Robert Saleh doesn't want it, but maybe Woody Johnson has more say in that situation. He is one of the owners after all. And he may recognize like, hey, yeah, I know you don't want it, but it's good because of this. I think the same thing could be true here. But here's the hard part for here. There would be part of the reason why people want is because they want to show moving past the last several years, moving past the Dan Snyder era, what this organization is capable of. Are they in position to show that? And, and just to see, what Ron Rivera and his staff have going on, watching a guy like Eric Bieniemy and what he adds on the field. I'm going to get to that in a minute, because that's part of the positive developments from the spring is Bieniemy's presence. I'll get to that, but that's one of the things that they would want to highlight. Guys like Terry McLaurin, people like John Allen, guys who would really kind of, been that they would like to see their national profile be raised a little bit. Again, if you're comparing it to the New York market and Aaron Rodgers, kind of hard to compete, but that's why some people here would want it. Don't know if it's going to happen. Again, they're one of 4 teams that would be eligible to do it, or that they really don't have much of a say if HBO says this. Now you can lobby behind the scenes and say nobody here wants it and they'll pick someone else. But I don't know that they're going to get it. The other problem here is, when will the new ownership be in place? That could throw the wrench into it, because if there's no vote taken until the middle of August, is that something that plays into this or not? I don't know. Anyway, but they haven't heard, so now you know. So let's get to the positive developments from the spring and then some lingering questions. Let's start off with what I would say is one of the best signs for them this spring was the health, and specifically with a couple guys in particular, starting with tight end Logan Thomas. He looked like the Logan Thomas pre-ACL injury. Now, a big part of that too will be the blocking. Will he be Well, he blocked more effectively than he did last year because it wasn't his best year with that. But I think some of that goes back to the confidence in the knee. And he got hurt doing that. So that's where I think moving past that, I think will be good for him. But it's also how he was used because he was feeling healthier too. Same with Cole Turner. I would put him in that basket as well, but specifically with Logan. And he's such a good target for a young quarterback or for any quarterback, especially in the red zone. And you saw that being played out on the field during practice sessions. So I think that was good. Cole Turner, same thing. I think it could make that tight end group. I still like that tight end group. Curtis Hodges, healthy as well, was not healthy last year. Turner at this point last year looked really good. In the summer, early on, looked really good. Then he hurt his hamstring. That's going to slow any development because when you come back, now you're coming back during the season with a hamstring that maybe has slowed you down. And it limits your development as a player because you can only do so much when you're trying to recover from that. You're not learning the offense. You're not going up against NFL talent. It's a different game in the summer than it is during the season as far as practices go. One, you're getting ready for the season. The other one, you're getting ready for a game. Big difference. So positive development. Chase Young, his knee, positive development. He looked like he had confidence in that knee. And this goes back to why they wanted him so badly to play last season, late in the year. They got him for those 3 games and they wanted him to come to camp. Listen, they were hoping that he could help them last year, but I think they knew, in talking to them at that time, they knew where he was at as a player, that he may not have these big splash plays. They weren't looking for that. What they wanted as much as anything too is for him to come into camp this year feeling confident in that knee so he can go out and play the way that they feel like he can. And I think you saw that. Like, he definitely looked more confident in that knee with his get-offs, with the way he was engaging, et cetera. And just there was a spryness to him and more of an explosiveness, but the confidence is the biggest factor. And if he's confident in that knee, that's a good sign for them. I would also say, I think as one defensive player told me, he's hungry. I think there's a feeling like he might be a little bit pissed off that he doesn't have that fifth year option, or more so from the standpoint of, hey, I'm going to show you what I can do. That's a good thing for them. That's what they want. That's what Daron Payne did last year. So, and I don't know, Chase hasn't said he's pissed off. I don't know if he is or not, but if you're an athlete and you're a competitor, you'd be tweaked. Of course you would be. You want them to want you. You want them to want you, for the long haul. And if they say, well, we still want to see more, how are you going to react? But the way you react is by going out there and playing a certain way. And if you do that, then my God, he's going to be rewarded big time. So that's a good sign for them. I think Brian Robinson being healthy and doing the things like that you think he can do. Now, in the spring, you're not putting on pads and all that. That's where we're going to see it. But he started to show some explosiveness at the end of the year on some runs to the outside, that if that becomes more part of his game, I think he's going to become a more effective running back. We all know what happened to him last year, and there's no way that he really could have showed all of who he was. I'm not even sure he ever showed that. And I asked Randy Jordan about that when we talked to the assistant coaches a couple of weeks ago. And I don't know that in Robinson's mind that he ever showed them what he fully could do. So good sign for him that he's maybe where he wants to be as a player. So another thing, I think one of the other positive developments, and this maybe is, I don't know if this is the biggest thing, but it's Eric Bieniemy's presence. And, I was going to say he was arguably the biggest pickup in the offseason. I don't think there's any arguably. He was their biggest pickup because he impacts an entire side of the ball. And I think that, it's not just, oh, he yells a lot. And we all are going to latch onto that. I love when he says some of this stuff, mainly because I think there's a purpose behind it. It's not just yelling to yell. It's yelling for a purpose. And I think there's a difference. And I think it's trying to get an offense that has not been good for several years to actually perform to a better level. That's what you want. You want the demanding. You want there to be accountability for if you're not doing it a certain way or doing it to a certain level, that he's going to hold you accountable. So I think that's been a very positive development. One of the things, and it's funny because, and I was talking to a defensive guy and he brought up sense of urgency, that he feels the defense has that. And he also feels that Bieniemy brings that, and that it kind of leads the defense to match that level of urgency that Bieniemy installs in the offense and those offensive players. That's an impact. That's what you want to see from a team. Like that's a very good thing for them, that if you have an offensive coach, and again, one of the things that even I think it was Curtis Samuel was saying earlier this spring, when you have a coach like that, you don't want him just to be the only one providing the energy. You want to go out and match that and provide more, because it can't just be about the coach doing it. Because if it's only the coach doing it, you're going to have problems. The players have to take that from you and then go from there. Because if the coach has more energy and is doing it more and more urgency, there's a problem. But if it instills that in your offense, then it takes to the practice field. Now you have two sides of the ball with that same level of urgency, and that leads to improvement. That's what their hope is. And so that's certainly the feeling of some players that I talked to with about him. And again, it raises kind of the level of all. And it's not just about the yelling. A lot to still learn about him. We don't know how he's going to handle play calling in a game full time. We don't know how all the offense is going to look, but that other aspect, I think it was needed and is welcomed, I think, by here. Another positive development, the defensive backs in general. It's not just the young guys like Emmanuel Forbes, Quan Martin. I think both those guys look good in the spring. See how they progress in the summer. See how they handle the joint practices with the Ravens when they're going up against different receivers, although this group is very good. And I think it's a versatile receiver group, because while they all have speed and all that, there are different levels of what they offer. Jahan Dotson is very shifty and quick. And I think he's tough to cover because of it. So there's a different level that you're covering with each of those guys that helps the defensive backs grow. But I think there's a lot of versatility with this group. And it's not, you have Cam Curl who can play the deep. He can play up. He can play up in the box. He can play the Buffalo nickel. Quan Martin can play in the slot. He can play, they're expecting him to be able to play the Buffalo nickel. He can drop deep. Jeremy Reeves is a backup. He can play multiple spots. Remember last year, he went in and played multiple spots. He's a small dude. He was out there bringing it because he was prepared and ready. And I think you have Kendall Fuller, smart guy on the outside. Forbes, going to be an outside guy. And, again, I told you why they worked him inside a couple podcasts ago. It's a just in case. It's a you never know. Also, it enhances the defensive versatility. If he can go there in there occasionally and cover, it just adds to what you can do. St. Juste, as long as he stays healthy, I think we'll have another solid year. But one of the things I really like about this group is it's one of the smarter secondaries that I've been around since covering this team in general. And I'd have to sit down and go back and say, well, how does it compare to this secondary, that secondary? I thought when Greg Williams was here, they had a pretty smart secondary as well. But in general, it's one of the smarter groups I think I've been around, because again, it's not just, I think Fuller is one of the smarter corners. I think St. Juste is a guy that learns a lot out there. And I really appreciate that about his game. Forbes, I think, was a smart college corner. Let's see what he does here. But I think that's one of the strengths he has. And same with Quan Martin. Jeremy Reeves, I think Cam Curl is super smart. And I think it adds to the versatility. When you're versatile like that, it's because you're smart. It's because you know how, like when they go to the Buffalo nickel, it's not as simple as like, oh, you're down. You have to read the game differently because of the position you're in. You are now more like a linebacker. So you have to understand their responsibilities in this gap or in this situation, et cetera. So it's, so there's a lot, that I think to like about that young group. And one of the things they were doing this spring was playing fast. That comes from being smart. It's not just it's not just 40 speed. It's play speed. Play speed is far more important than your 40 speed. Play speed means that you know what you're doing and you react accordingly. You know what you're doing, you know what you're seeing, and you know what you're supposed to do on that because of that. And boom, you go play fast. That's what it is. Now, the 40 speed, it's going to be, if a guy gets by, you might be able to make it up, but the play speed is bigger. And I think this group has played like that. School is out and summer is here, so it's time to plan your next family adventure. With 8 different levels, 16 courses, 250 climbing obstacles, and over 4,000 feet of zip lines, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring, located in Montgomery County, Maryland, is the largest ropes course and zip line park in the country. Beat the heat and join us after dark for some night climbing. When the sun goes down, the park is lit up, allowing you to climb under the stars. Check out their glow-in-the-park events for extra glow lights and music throughout the forest. Want to keep your feet on the ground? Grab a bite to eat from the food truck and give axe throwing a try. Perfect for first-timers or experts. Their projector systems allow you to throw at traditional targets, play tic-tac-toe, Connect Four, or even hunt zombies. Listeners of this show can get $5 off any ticket by entering the code KEIM23DC at checkout. That's KEIM23DC, KEIM23DC. Now open 7 days a week, this is the perfect time of year to get outside and join the adventure at theadventurepark.com. One of the things that does is it helps Sam Howell. And here's why. And I was talking to some defensive guys about this, and there was a play in practice. I don't know if it was last week or one of the plays where, and this is just in a how they can help Howell situation. This is one example, but they would, their ability to disguise coverages, and they show up, they go up, they show a cover zero look. And so Howell checks to a cover zero beater, but they drop to a cover three. And, and so they fool them with that. That's good for him. That's what you want to have happen in practice. But I also think I think it's also explains some of the stuff where both sides of the ball are. Defense is further ahead. They've been in this system now for 4 years. And this is the second year with this coverage system, the zone match coverage. And you really are only, you added a couple of guys, Cody Barton is new, although he was working a lot with the twos. You have obviously Emmanuel Forbes, Quan Martin, but by and large, it's the same group. And so they can play a little bit faster because of it. And they can do things. They're a little bit further. They're obviously further along in where they're at with their knowledge of their side of the ball. Whereas the offense is still learning stuff. And a guy like Howell still learning. So when you're facing a situation like that, that's going to help you grow, because maybe you start to get some tips as to what to look for or how to handle that situation if it occurs in a real game. And also, I think one of the things, some of these defensive guys have talked to him about, hey, in a game, you're going to be able to game plan for this. The coaches have told Howell this, that in a game, you can they'll tell him, we'll game plan for the blitzes in a game. So don't worry about certain things there, but learn how to pick it up. Learn what, if you read it, you need to be able to read it well. Even if you don't game plan for it, you still have to react to it, even in practice. But that ability to disguise and play fast, I think, is a good thing for the development of this offense. Now, I'll get to more in Howell in a second, but I do think that was a good thing to see this spring. The D-line is what it is, man. We know that it's good. The wide receivers, we know that they're good. I do expect I'm a big fan of Jahan Dotson, what I think that kid can do. I think he's going to work really well with Howell. And, the kid puts on moves. He put on some moves last year. I'm like, it's too bad that they didn't throw him the ball, because that was a hell of a move. And just watching that kid get open can be fun to see when you go back and rewatch the games. Anyway, that aside. So now another positive thing was, I think, how I see Antonio Gibson's role developing. And we've heard it the last couple of years. Oh, he's going to be this. He's going to be that. They're going to use him like this or that. And it doesn't quite develop that way. Now, I always say there's only one football, and there are only so many plays you can run. So somebody's always going to get left out in the cold, where if you remember James Thrash back in the day when Joe Gibbs was here, it was always in the summertime, James Thrash would look great. It's oh, this is year, we're going to use him more, And then you get to the year and it's it kind of is what it is. He's if you use him more, you're using somebody else less. If you're getting him the ball more, it's someone else, maybe is a better player, is getting the ball less. Same thing with everything on this offense. So while certain guys may look good, it may not result. Cole Turner has looked pretty good. Curtis Hodge looked pretty good. It may not result in a 50-catch season, but it may result in an effective season for them, for what this team needs from them. Now, to Antonio Gibson, I do like the way they've been moving him around, and I'm curious to see just the alignments, where they're going to align him, not just as a single, not just in the backfield, where they position him in the backfield, lining him up at the slot out wide. Now, he's done some of this in the past, of course, but I do think they're going to try and get him the ball in different ways, because in space, that dude is dangerous. I mean, he just is. Your screen game, I think he could be very dangerous. So I think it's like, I think the way his role could develop is something that will be definitely something to watch this summer and then this season, because this has to be the year where they use him a lot. But this offense has needed playmakers. He is a potential playmaker. The tight ends, I look at them as guys who can really help them, but the playmakers are Gibson can be one, Curtis Samuel, McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. Those are the big time playmakers. Now, Brian Robinson, I think, could become that guy, but I look at Gibson as a more versatile guy who can handle those kind of, maybe be more of a playmaker in different situations, running or catching. I think Robinson can be a very effective runner. And again, I think you started to see some of the ability to be a little bit more explosive on certain runs last year, which will help. But I think Gibson is a guy that I would say, like, watching how they, I think, plan to use him was a positive development. Oh boy, another guy that I liked, Clique Hudson. I liked what I saw from him. I think one of the things that is, it's interesting with pro athletes, because you don't always focus on this because they are pro athletes. Like, hey, you've achieved to a certain level. You should have this level of confidence. But even when you talk to these guys, like, they still need to build it in the role they're in or in the situation they're in. And I think Clique Hudson going out and playing well in that last game not only fueled more of his confidence, but I think it also left him with the coaches as oh, wow, maybe he can do something. Maybe he can be more than they thought. And that's what I think that's where some of that. So the more confidence they have in him, the more it's going to put him in better situations to show what he can do, the more it builds his own. And I don't know that he lacks confidence as much as just continues to build it. So I don't know where he's going to go with it, but I did like where he was at this spring. And I think he's going to be a guy to watch this summer. So that's another one. I think the defensive mentality is good. I was talking to one guy and he's like, they know that they finished strong and started slow the last couple of years. The mentality is you need to start fast. And I think they're in position to do that, not just with some of the first couple of games of the offense they're facing in Arizona and Denver, where Denver will be interesting. But I also think because of where they're at, again, in their defensive program, same coordinator now for a fourth year. You have a lot of the same guys, so they know each other. You have Chase Young coming back. You have, I think a secondary that was playing well at the end of the year, and I think can play well because of the versatility they have. I think I'll be curious to see where Jamin Davis gets to. Is Cody Barton, what does he contribute? And then again, Clique Hudson. So I think there's a lot of reasons why they should play fast. They have to start fast. Like, if one side of the ball with Howell, we don't know. And I'll get to this in a minute, but the offense could take time. Like, for all the things that we see, most of the questions are still on the offensive side of the ball. So let's get to that. So, like, for Howell, I like the progress he's made. I do. And, I like every step of the way. I like the progress he made during training camp last year. Like the progress a lot that he made during the season when we were able to, going from what we saw at the end of August in the game to what we saw in December. And I think that was a very positive thing for him. I like what I saw from him this season or this spring, so it's a good step for Howell. And I like the things that he talks about. I think he's a very naturally calm, poised guy. He's a smart quarterback. So I think all that is good development. But as other players and teammates will tell you, he's going to have growing pains. So how are those growing pains going to manifest themselves on the field? I don't know. And that's the thing we don't know about. That's one of the questions is, how good will he be? We don't know. And when will he be that quarterback? We don't know. There's a natural learning curve when you haven't played a lot, and he started one game. So please keep that in mind and give him some patience, give him some room to grow and develop and just see where he goes. The key will be he can't cost them games along the way, but he is going to have, you can have growing pains in a win. He had that against Dallas. He had, pick there where he learned something from. So, and there's going to be more, and that's okay. That's what a young quarterback goes through. But again, I said it before, is what the key is for them is not putting it all on him. And I think they have the kind of offense where you don't have to put it all on him to make these big, spectacular plays. You get guys in space, get the guy here, read this, do this, hand it off to this guy, put him in a better spot because of the scheme, the play action game, the screen game, et cetera. I think, again, for Howell, I think the screen game development is a good sign for them, as well as, I think the types of motion they're going to use for him. You can help him out with the types of motion. They used a lot of motion last year, but it wasn't always with the tight ends. And I think the tight ends can kind of give you a different clue from what the defense is doing. So look for more of the tight end motion to maybe provide more clues for the quarterback. A young guy like Howell can use that. Any guy can use that. So, but again, we don't know when he's going to hit that maturation point as a quarterback, but I like where he's at. I like where he can get to. So that's a good step, and again, I've always said they have a good insurance policy in Jacoby Brissett. Now, the offensive line, where are they at? I think one of the hard parts is in the spring is to know, again, exactly where are they, because there isn't any contact. So we'll get a better feel for them as we see the summer, but I did like the Nick Gates signing. And I think Andrew Wiley adds a professional tackle to them. Is he a Pro Bowl tackle? Probably not. But is he better than what they've been using? Yeah, I think he is. So and I do think like Cosme inside, I love that move. And I think one of the things that with him, not every tackle can move inside. I remember watching, if you guys remember John Jansen at the end of his career, they tried to move him inside. He was stiff inside there. It wasn't natural for him. I think Cosme moves a little bit better than there. I think he also has a good anchor, and when to the ability to anchor in a tight space as well and move within that tight space. So I think he's going to be good inside there. So I'd like that side. Gates, Cosme, Wiley, I think it's going to be solid. Is Wiley going to? I don't know that. How is he going to match up against different kinds of pass rushers? I don't know. How can the scheme help this group? But before I get to scheme, Sadiq Charles at left guard. Don't know. A lot of questions to answer there. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to prove that he can be that guy. And if not, then is Chris Paul that guy? He was pretty raw at the end of the year. Has he developed? Will he have developed enough this summer to win that job? Charles Leno, you know what you're going to get out of him. And so I think that's all good. But again, the scheme, how will the scheme help? How will they have more 3-step drops, getting rid of the ball fast, and taking some of the pressure off the offensive line to have to hold for 5 and 7-step drops a lot. The play action game, that can help. A better play action game can help. This team used a lot of play action last year, believe it or not. Wasn't always as effective. And you look at their QBR, their quarterback ratings for out of play action was one of the worst in the NFL. It was like it was like 20th in the 20s, I think it was. Whereas the number of times they ran play action was like, I think 6th overall, but threw out of it, believe it or not. Of course they threw out of it. That's what you do. But it was, I think it was 6th most overall, but their QBR was 20th. So it wasn't as effective. Why isn't? I think some of that was how they set it up, how you sell it. It's a big thing is how you sell it. You've got to make it look like it's one of your runs. If they do that better, it buys a guy like Howell more time, which helps the offensive line. So there are ways you can mitigate it. However, it is still a question as to what will their effectiveness be? How will how will it look? And when will this group coalesce? Because there are, you are talking essentially you have a new right guard, you have a new right tackle, you have a new center, and you have a new left guard. Those are a lot of changes. Now, Cosme and Charles have been here, but it's still a lot of changes for one group. When do they mesh with that, right? So I think that's why there's a lot of questions on that side of the ball because of the changes. Doesn't mean they can't succeed, but there are questions. And I think, but I do like where they could go with it. And I do think they can win games while this offense matures. So, but again, you're going to have to see, how will those growing pains look? And I think that's the one thing that I'll be curious to see during the season, but also to see how does it develop this summer. And I think that's why, these are all steps along the way. And this is they're not a final product. It's June 13th as I tape this. If you're a final product in June 13th, you're going to probably be in trouble because you want to get better. And I think this team, the one thing with this offense is there's more potential to get better because of the talent they do have. And because Howell is a young quarterback, then he'll continue to get better. Again, how he'll look when he's a finished product, well, we probably won't know for a couple of years. And if it goes well this year, then we'll see how it goes for him over the next couple of years. Anyway, that's it for me. I don't think I have anything else, folks. So that's my little OTA spring practice session wrap up. I'll be back with another episode on Friday. And again, I always appreciate you listening. So talk to you next time.